So in the first half of the course, we drove our way through a number of different views of the nature of erotic love. We arrived at what in some ways is clearly the culmination of the view that Plato is developing in his Symposium, a view that suggests that erotic love has two fundamental aspects to it. An aspect that connects us with a special intimacy to other human beings, but that the nature of that special erotic intimacy is not only, or is not captured wholly by connection, by union, because the nature of erotic intimacy is that it has a specific kind of openness to creativity or procreativity. We ended the first half of the semester by looking at the way this Platonic understanding of the fundamental structure of the human erotic drive comes on the scene in contemporary culture, particularly through something that's thought of as a distinctively Catholic understanding of the nature of marriage, something that we looked at most particularly in the short story of Andre Dubusse and in the encyclical of Pope Paul VI. Here after break then, we've continued to explore this focus on marriage as the most complete, perhaps also the most problematic, of all erotic relationships. We kicked off this part of the semester by looking at Shakespeare's great tragedy of marriage, Othello. The fact that Othello focuses so much on marriage distinguishes it from Shakespeare's other great tragedies. Of course, there are many political dimensions as well to Othello, as there are in, say, Macbeth and in Hamlet and in Lear. But Othello is distinguished by the centrality of the nuptial relationship in the way that certain kinds of demands of knowledge can undermine the possibilities for the kind of trust necessary for marriage to live itself out. What we've turned to today is a movie by the well-known American director Woody Allen, who, by the way, was a philosophy major in his youth, and it shows. This particular movie, to my mind, is the finest of all his movies, though certainly there'd be some disagreement about that. I suspect that many of you have seen at least a few Woody Allen movies over the years. A more recent movie called Match Point is another movie that I've considered using in the course because it's been recommended to me by so many students. But I persist in using Hannah and Her Sisters because the focus here on marriage and its challenges seems to me to extend into a much more contemporary context many of the themes from Othello. I'm sure it was not lost on people as observant as all of you that in the very last scene of the movie, Hannah's mother congratulates her on taking up the role of Desdemona in a new production. Her mother has a rather unusual perspective on what's enjoyable about the role. I won't spoil the surprise for the one or two of you who may not have had a chance to see the movie yet. But clearly, Woody Allen wants the gesture toward Shakespeare. He wants you to have Othello in mind the play Othello, and in particular the fate of Desdemona, when you think about Mia Farrow in this particular movie, about what happens to Hannah. For those of you who've had occasion to read Henrik Ibsen's great turn of the century, that is around 1900, domestic tragedy, melodrama, A Doll's House, the movie begins in the first scene by introducing Hannah to us as someone who starred as Nora in that play. So the entire movie frames Hannah to us as an actress who's played two of the classic parts that represent a woman in a condition of domestic tragedy. Now, in A Doll's House, Nora breaks out and achieves liberation. Of course, as we know, in Othello, Desdemona fails to break out. In the end, the inability of Othello to accept something about Desdemona results in Desdemona's death. So Woody Allen intends this movie, of course, to be funny, to be entertaining, to be touching. I laughed, I cried, yeah. But he also intends smart people to see it. People who will bring to bear their own reading as well as their own life experience on what happens in this particular movie. If you've read Ibsen, you have one set of references, and if you've read Shakespeare, you have yet another set of references. What I'd like to do now is to show a rather longish cut from the movie, from the section called Autumn Chill, and then return to discuss some of the themes that emerge from it.
The nights are really getting cooler. Summer went so quickly. Soon it'll be fall. My literature professor really likes me. It was fun being out with him last night. Funny, I feel like I'm betraying Elliot, but that's ridiculous. Why shouldn't I see Doug? Elliot's not free. Just go one step at a time. Let's see what the next few months bring.
Hannah? Hi. Listen, you'll be happy to know that your money has not gone completely to waste. No, I have an actual first rough draft of something I wrote. Yeah, well, I showed it to Lee, and she gave me some good pointers. And, listen, I'm pretty near where you live. I wonder if I could just drop it off. And, you know, when you have some time, read it, and we'll talk when I come over at Thanksgiving. Okay? All right. Okay. Oh, wait. Listen. I think Lee met an interesting guy at Columbia. Yeah, well, he sounds really nice. Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, we'll talk at Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Now, here's a song that Norma sang on that trip we made up to the show in Buffalo. And, oh, was she beautiful that night. Thank you, honey. Oh, yes, you were, Dave. Don't you remember that night? She was so beautiful. She was so beautiful that when men saw her walking along the streets, they'd drive their cars right up on the sidewalk. That right, honey?
A slight exaggeration, but only slight.
You've been very cold to me tonight.
No,
Is something wrong?
not here. There are too many people around.
Hey, Hannah? You know, I think Lee is really serious about her new boyfriend. Yeah, from what I understand, he sounds really nice. I'm so happy for her. I think she's in love. Hey, what's the matter?
I'm real upset about what you wrote.
My script?
It's obviously based on Elliot and me.
Oh, so loosely.
No, not oh so loosely, real specifically. Is that how you see us?
Well,
Can I not accept gestures and feelings from people? Do I put people off?
it's a made-up story.
No, it's real exact. The situations, the dialogue, everything. It's full of intimate details between Elliot and me, which I don't see how you could even possibly know about. A conversation we once had about adoption.
Well, Lee mentioned that to me, so obviously you discussed it with her. I just took the essence and I blew it up into drama.
I don't see how Lee could know about these things. I don't tell her everything.
Well, I guess I hit a nerve.
You make it sound like, I have no needs or something. You think I'm too self-sufficient?
Hannah, that's not what I meant. Everybody relies on you for so much. You're so giving. It's not a criticism. We love you. We're grateful.
You're grateful, but you resent me.
Oh, wow. I don't want to have this conversation. I didn't do anything wrong. You mentioned to me yourself that you and Elliot were having some problems.
You were having problems that are my business, which I don't see how you could know about in such detail. How does Lee know about these things? How? They're private.
Well, why don't you share them with us?
I don't want to bother everyone.
That's the point. I'd like to be bothered.
I don't see how you could know about these things unless Elliot's been talking to you.
No, he hasn't. If I offended you, I'm sorry.
It's over, Elliot. I don't know how to be any clearer. It's over. I can't see you
I
anymore.
know my deserves.
No, I'm just as much at fault.
If you can believe I have such
I gotta be
feelings.
honest with you. I've met someone else.
What do you mean?
I've met someone else. I told you I wouldn't want to wait forever.
It hasn't been forever.
It's been nearly a year since our first time, and you're still married to my sister, which I now realize is fine because you're probably much more in love with her than you know.
Yeah, but we made so many
Yeah,
plans.
for sure we did, and in a way you led me on because I truly believed you were unhappy with Hannah. Otherwise, I would never have let myself be drawn in. I was very weak. So were you. Now I've met someone else. Dinner soon?
About 15 minutes.
Ah, good.
And you're in love overnight.
I care a great deal about him, yes. Now, it's over, Elliot. I mean it. It's over.
Sweetheart, I loved your script. I thought it was so clever.
Why, you're my mother. Not everybody's going to be such a sucker.
I particularly like the character of the mother. Just a boozy old flirt with a filthy mouth. I'm so proud.
Oh, Mom, thanks.
Now, here's a toast to Thanksgiving, all right? Are we supposed to have beer? Yeah! Let me hear it! How's that, Fletcher? Carl, to Thanksgiving. Here's a little toast, dog. Come on. Bottoms up.
Have you been talking to Holly or Lee about us, about our personal life?
Me? Of course not.
There's things Holly wrote about in her script about us that are so personal, they can only have come from you.
Look, I've got a splitting headache and I don't like being accused.
I'm not accusing, I'm asking. Do you find me too giving, too competent, to I don't know, disgustingly perfect or something?
No.
Well, what is it then? What's come between us? How have I alienated you?
Hannah, my head is throbbing.
You never want to talk about it. Every time I bring it up, you change the subject. What is it? We're communicating less and less. You sleep with me less and less?
Hannah, I am very mixed up now, please.
Do you talk to Holly or Lee behind my back? Do you? You must. They seem to know so much about us.
Well, maybe I've asked advice once or twice, or made a joke.
Well, what do you do? Do you talk to Holly or Lee or what? Do you phone me?
Leave me alone, can you? Jesus, I've told you. I need someone I can matter to.
You matter to me completely.
It's hard to be around someone who gives so much and needs so little in return.
So look, I have enormous needs.
Well, I can't see them, and neither can Lee or Holly.
This movie, like some of Woody Allen's other movies, could be criticized for being formulaic, for having characters who, in a way, are so representative of a point of view or of a type that it can take away from their humanness, from how much they're realized. A movie that many people point to as maybe Woody Allen's best movie, a movie made, I think, just after Hannah and Her Sisters, Crimes and Misdemeanors, seems to me actually to fail because of this in a variety of ways. I think the characters aren't fully real. They're too much just types, just representatives of something. in this movie, the people certainly are types in a way, but at least to my eye, this movie is successful in making these types utterly human beings. Hannah is the big sister in her family. We see her as the product of a certain kind of childhood. It reminds us, it brings us back to certain aspects of the hairdresser's husband in this regard. She's the product of being the person in her family who made everybody else whole, who fixed things, who most particularly fixed things between her alcoholic parents. You'll notice that alcohol and alcoholism plays a central organizing role in this movie. The youngest sister, Lee, goes to AA meetings to get herself under control. When Elliot seduces her, if you can seduce somebody who's that willing, "Oh, Elliot, you shouldn't say things like that to me. Except right now, say more." We see their first time, as she says it in that scene, in a hotel room. We see them drinking wine together. So that one can interpret this as Elliot gives her wine to make her more pliable, or, which seems to me more consistent with the character of Lee in the movie, you can interpret that as Lee drinks wine in order to give herself more deniability about what she's doing. Then she has a way that she can schlup off the responsibility onto something else and onto someone else, which is one of her most defining character traits. She's a gorgeous, attractive woman. Part of the aesthetic power and of the moral dubiousness of this movie is that it makes you fall in love with such a horrible person. This movie walks a very tight line. It's on a high wire because it wants to be, in the end, a comedy. People do not suffer for their moral depravity in this movie. They are always redeemed from it. The most complete sign of this is that at the very end of the movie, the last thing anybody says is, "I'm pregnant." The middle sister, Holly, the one I think of as the vibrating sister, she actually won the Academy Award for that role, as Michael Caine won for his role as Elliot. Both won the Supporting Actor and Actress Awards. The movie sees reconciliation or sees redemption in children, so that children and fertility and infertility are also themes that wind throughout this particular movie. Now, I'll only be able to pick out a couple of these themes to work on them a little bit today. For yourself, I think you would find this movie very worth a second viewing. It's a very carefully structured movie so that the plots interact in all sorts of exciting ways. When Lee, the little sister, constantly puts herself in a position of dependence, Mia Farrow's character, the oldest sister, constantly avoids a situation of dependence. Lee achieves her freedom by turning herself over to others. Her freedom comes at the cost of responsibility. Hannah's freedom's the opposite. Hannah achieves freedom by being completely responsible for everyone, even for her parents. The middle sister, Holly, has a different strategy for freedom. She achieves freedom through irresponsibility. So Woody Allen has, in a way, just systematically explored some human options, some temptations that we have. All of these temptations are ways of avoiding something that love might demand. Let's think of the character of Hannah for a second here. Hannah, as that scene shows us, is someone who never wants to project herself to others as needy. She says in that scene to her sister Holly, "I don't want to bother anyone." The word bother in this movie has been loaded up with significance through the music of the movie. The signature song of Hannah's parents, and it's played over and over again, sometimes with the words and sometimes without the words, is "Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered," a famous song about the nature of falling in love, about how being bothered by another person, being, as the DJ in Club Exotica like to say, all hot and bothered, is something we have to give ourselves up to in order to experience a certain kind of romantic love. So when Hannah says in that scene, "I don't want to bother anybody," what other people hear is that I don't want to be loved by anybody. I want to love, but I don't want to be loved. I want to give, but I don't want to be given. So the particular kind of big sister syndrome from which she suffers is that of trying to take on too much of the role of being the director of everybody else's life. A benevolent director, to be sure, but taking on that director role makes her feel controlling to others. Now, I add, as a kind of aside here, that this is the sort of movie where the real lives of the actress, of the star, the real life of the star actress, shines into the movie and creates some very uncomfortable aspects of it. Mia Farrow herself has a large adopted family. She adopted many children, just as she has adopted children in this movie. Woody Allen, of course, took up with one of Mia Farrow's adopted children when he was still Mia Farrow's lover. So that when I say this movie walks into a moral gray zone, it seems to me Woody Allen must have known that this is a movie that enforces on us the fact that art imitates life. The characters in this movie have a very discomforting relationship to the people playing the characters in the movie. So Hannah's self-sufficiency, her unwillingness to project need to others, to give anybody else anything to do in loving her, comes under question in the movie. Now, it was exactly Hannah's directorial skills that attracted Elliot to her in the first place. You remember that Elliot mentions that his life was a mess before he knew Hannah. The very thing that attracted him to Hannah is now the thing that he's finding suffocating. So he looks for somebody whose life he can direct. The Lee that we see in this movie has a whole series of relationships to older men who can teach her things, who can be her mentors. She starts off with Frederick. She moves toward Elliot. She ends up with the guy from Columbia, Doug. Hannah is the mentor. She's the one who makes other people's lives better. Notice how she's always shown taking the initiative in things. when we have flashbacks to when she was married to Mickey. We see her as the primary driving force in their life as well, particularly in those scenes involving the infertility clinic. Whose side are we supposed to be on when it comes to Hannah's self-sufficiency? Hannah, of course, does not interpret herself as a person with no needs. In what I think is the most horrifying line in the whole movie, I think a deeply disturbing line because it's so very sad, in this scene we just saw, when she says to Elliot, "I have enormous needs." Imagine being in a position where you have to convince your lover that you have any need of him. It's a terrible situation for her. All of the things she thought of, she was giving to others as a gift. All of the help, all of the avoidance of bothering them, is now being thrown back into her face as if they were exercises of her selfishness rather than of her selflessness. People can't feel gratitude toward her because there's nothing they've been able to give back. This aspect of Hannah, of course, has something comic about it. I know that when I was a kid, every Christmas my dad would give my brothers and sisters and me, he'd give us some money. And then, like, we'd go to a mall or something, and he'd tell us to buy something for my mom. Now, he never told us, buy something for me. And he would have felt really weird if that's what we did with the money. He was a much better gift giver than he was a gift receiver. He's better about it now. He's not greedy, but he's better about accepting gifts now. But it took him a long time, I think, to learn to be able to accept the gift from one of his children. In effect, that's the way, it seems to me, that Hannah treats her siblings and her parents, but also treats her husbands. Of all of the people in this movie, the one that I find probably least likable, but the one that I think gives the greatest performance is Michael Caine. If you think back to this movie visually, something that I think you'll be struck by is how much of Michael Caine's performance as Elliot is shot over one of his shoulders or shot to his back. Somehow he is able to convey through the gestures of his hands and the shrug of his shoulders, the kind of posture that he has, even more than he does by direct shots of his face, what kind of a man he is. So that in the scene after he's just made a very clumsy lurch in Frederick and Lee's apartment toward trying to kiss Lee, and then he hits the needle on the phonograph, that piece of ancient technology, and changes the song from a slow one to a fast one, changes the movement. And then everything blows up with Dusty trying to buy a painting from Frederick that matches his sofa, and they end up running out in the street. But then Lee comes out and looks for Michael Caine, for Elliot. And there's a scene where it's shot from the back of Michael Caine, showing Lee giving in to him or playing the part of someone giving in to him. And it's a scene that ends with him saying, "I have my answer." He knows that his wife's sister is willing to have an affair with him. The whole interchange with Lee, a key moment in the movie, doesn't show Michael Caine's face. Somehow, his life of infidelity, is lived out so fully that it doesn't need his language, it doesn't need his expression. It just needs all of him. It seems to me a very fine accomplishment of Woody Allen's to have drawn so expressive a performance out of an actor's body, not out of an actor's facial expressions. What kind of accomplishment, then, overall is this movie as an exploration of some of the challenges of marriage? In a way, the movie's extremely optimistic, because despite their marital disasters, despite growing up in a marriage that itself was a disaster, these characters find a way to love. They don't, it's true, have much success with their first spouse. It seems the view of marriage behind this movie is something like this: practice makes perfect. So that people get better by working out some things with one spouse and then grow up enough to make a real marriage with another spouse. I don't think we're to understand Hannah as ever discovering that her husband Elliot has been sleeping with her sister Lee. So we're not forced to confront Hannah's ability to work through that very specific form of infidelity. But we do see in the movie that all of the couples end happily. They all find a way toward love. But that bright comic side of the movie is counterbalanced by a very dark undertow. An undertow that makes fidelity in marriage look like something not only difficult, but perhaps impossible. Not only impossible, but perhaps not worth having even if it were possible. The infidelities in this movie turn out not to go very deep into these characters. They overcome them much more easily than, say, Othello was able to overcome even his mere fantasy of Desdemona's infidelity. Does this lightening of marital infidelity, as I think of it in this movie, does this make for a more optimistic or a more pessimistic view of what marriage is, of what marriage would call us to become? It seems to me a very live question, a question that the movie deserves us to ask. To find this movie merely entertaining is not really to enter into it. The movie is calling for a judgment. My own judgment on the movie is quite negative. As successful and as entertaining as I think the movie is, I think it's immoral. I think the movie is trying to make us take up a comic view toward our own temptations, toward infidelity. Perhaps that's not fair. But then I didn't say the course was going to be fair. See you on Wednesday.